Hi, I'm Sunil. I'm the Tricho Prescriber for growback.co.uk. Today I'm going to illustrate the relationship between prostaglandins and hair loss and hair shedding, as well as hair growth. The two common molecules that are used in the industry are Minoxidil and Finasteride. They work really well for most people, but for some people they don't work, and that's due to these bioactive chemicals called prostaglandins. So they have different various activities on the hair follicle, specifically the hair growth cycles. So the hair growth cycle goes through anagen, catagen, and telogen, where anagen is the growth of the hair follicle, catagen is kind of the release and the shedding process towards telogen, and the cycle just continues as we recycle hairs and they go through their cycles. So prostaglandin D2, E2 and F2 are the ones responsible for the control of the hair growth cycle. Looking specifically at the hair growth cycle, so something like prostaglandin D2, when you have high amounts of D2 is when you're getting to a catagen. It's a chemical reaction that signals to the hair follicle it's time to release and shed. But when we come to the growth phase, what happens, the D2 dips down to allow for the other prostaglandins, which are responsible for the anagen, the growth phase. So prostaglandin E2 is the one that initiates growth, and the F2 maintains growth. What people do is use things like minoxidil, which specifically helps with the E prostaglandin, which is about initiating growth, but not necessarily continuing growth. And the continuation of growth is what delays the hair shedding and the hair kind of hair loss process. So with something like finasteride, what it's doing is blocking something called DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone. What dihydrotestosterone does causes hair follicle miniaturization, but what it also does is cause inflammation. With inflammation, what happens is prostaglandin D2 synthesis is upregulated. So if it's upregulated when we're in the growth phase and you have inflammation, D2 will now start increasing because of the upregulation. So what that means is the shedding process will happen sooner. However, if we look at the other point, is that if we influence something like the F prostaglandin, what that will do, as you influence that and keep it up, what it will do is increase the continual growth phase. What that means to your hair is the length of your hair. If you influence something like the E prostaglandin and you surge that higher or sooner, what it means is that we reach the growth, new growth sooner, and the combination of the two, the E and the F, will help with the thickness of your hair. So when we come to kind of hair loss solutions and hair loss treatments, the standard minoxidil and finasteride will be fine for majority of patients, but there are going to be some patients who won't really get much joy, or they'll get some growth but not sufficient, and it's to do with the balance of the prostaglandins. But how would you know what your balances are? And this is where we come in. As an expert, we understand from your hair history, but at the same time we also do DNA analysis, and DNA is basically the programming of how your body's made, and the test we do specifically for your hair follicle. So what it will test is, what are you overproducing and what are you underproducing? So let's say you have a point of overproducing the D and underproducing E and F. What that will mean is twofold. You'll be getting more shedding, but also your growth cycles will be shorter, which means you'll be going through the hair cycles very, very quickly, sooner, and the frequency of those will be much higher. And what that will do is shorten the lifespan of your hair follicle. With DHT miniaturizing the hair follicle and the imbalance of your prostaglandins simply means that you'll be getting early kind of hair loss compared to normal. What they have found in studies is that people who do suffer hair loss, this prostaglandin D2 seems to be 3 times kind of more surplus than someone who hasn't got the kind of a hair loss issue. And what D2 does is create more inflammation. What it also does as a secondary is reduce oxygen circulating through the scalp. Why is that important? Because DHT becomes stronger when there's low oxygen. And then you get this vicious cycle where you have low oxygen making the DHT stronger, which miniaturizes the hair follicle. The DHT inflames the scalp or the follicle, which upregulates the D2. So you have this vicious cycle, which eventually can cause something called inflammation alopecia, which is a form of alopecia that sometimes may not be reversible. So it's really important to get these balances right, and the only way to do that is to speak to an expert like myself and to go through our DNA analysis. So, feel free to visit our website on www.growback.co.uk and book a consultation with me. Don't forget to like and follow and subscribe. Thank you.